on Republic for starting off the brand new season out at Papa Murphy's Park. Come from behind, a little 1-1 draw there, late goal by one of the new additions to the roster, and that season is now back and underway as the Republic, their quest for another ring, as a matter of fact, happening, and we'll have info, of course, for your home games and everything coming up here just as the season goes on, as we're live from Mesa, Arizona, thanks to Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, they've got you covered. Check out at Jiffy Lube Sac on Twitter for all your deals, all the good stuff. Jiffy Lube takes care of us, Kyle. They take care of us all the time. The Jiffy Lube text line at 441140 is open.
Their logo's right about there.
Yeah, it's right above us on the video stream that they sponsor at KHTK.com. News from the Kings. Marvin Bagley is out tonight. That is not news. What could be significant, you never want to read too much into it, is his status has now been upgraded to day-to-day. So you hear that he has resumed basketball activities. Still thinking his debut, coming off an injury, will come probably in that first home game back from this road trip. But they still have Washington tonight, which obviously he's out for. And then they go to Boston and then Philadelphia. Maybe you see him in that Philly game. I just don't want to speculate, but having everything upgraded like that is definitely a sign that he is coming along. It is beautiful down here in Mesa, Arizona. You can see on the video cast I know the contrast is a little weird with us in here and the brightness outside, but the park is gorgeous. The mountains in the background. It's one of my favorite broadcasts of the year because we get to visit with A's players, and of course Bob Melvin, the manager, will join us here in just under 40 minutes. Also, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to say it's a depressing time of year for me, but spring training and March Madness are two of my favorite times of the year, Kyle.
Yeah.
They're also very depressing.
Why?
Because
I disagree.
I'll tell you why.
Please.
And by the way, I also think it's the second best time of the year for sports. I will say that as well.
Okay.
But it also means football season's over. Basketball season is down the home stretch.
Uh-huh.
And spring training and March Madness generally signal to me that it's like opening day, not just for the sport, but it's also opening day for summer. And before you know it, we'll be talking heavy baseball. Mm-hmm. It will be regularly in the mid to high 90s, if not low 100s. I do not like summer.
Same. I'm a very anti-summer guy.
Very anti-summer. I've said this before. If it was up to me, we would just we would just run. We would do something else all summer long, from the end of basketball season until opening of NFL camps. Maybe with a week or two in there for free agency in the NBA. You know, that's a thing.
But that's just
a lot of people disagree.
So with the way the NBA is now, and with even the way the NFL is, like they're 24/7 sports.
Uh-huh.
Like they're 12-month sports. So to say that basketball season is ending, basketball season ends in June. But then you have free agency to start talking about. You'll have football training camp starting up in July. And before you know it, you're into August and preseason football's on.
Yeah.
And then you're into September and you get college football and the NFL's starting and there's just the
big college football town, Sacramento.
Yeah. But you're a college football fan.
I personally am. No. I think of everything in terms of how hot it is and how hard the show's going to be to write. Everything else is secondary.
Right. No, I totally understand that. But that's kind of what I'm saying is you're talking like it's this like 8-month period where we're going to have nothing to talk about. It's really like June to maybe like the middle of July.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like a month and a half.
Well, even this year.
And you're gone for 4 of those weeks.
I try to be.
So.
Yes, if I can. Also, this summer it'll be a little bit different too with the Kings. In the past, you can argue that summer league was almost as exciting as the regular season. You get to see the new picks and all that.
I'm old enough to remember when Kings fans celebrated their summer league championship.
Yeah, I honest,
but not ironically, like actually celebrated.
I honest to goodness don't even know. This may be the first year. We'll have to make a decision, but we may not even go to Summer League this year in Vegas.
You said the first year, we didn't go last year.
I thought we did go last year.
No.
Yes, we did.
You went.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry you didn't get to go to Las Vegas in the middle of July. You really
no, but
missed out on
I have before.
Yeah. You really missed out.
I do enjoy Las Vegas, so.
I think Las Vegas is an armpit. I can't
I know you
stand
do
it.
because you've been there a bunch of times.
Hate
so.
Las Vegas. I'm
I don't.
using the word hate.
I don't.
Hate it.
I don't.
But that's
How
generally
about
where
you stay? I'll go.
Honest to God, I'd be all for that. I really would. I really would. You could go into the studio down there. You could gather all the interviews and everything. I'll just do everything from the studio. Okay, I, honest to God, would go for that. They wouldn't go for it. By they, I mean, they. But I would go for that. Wow. Yeah, exactly. They management. Yeah, they from the 916, David, you're so miserable during summer. Just take those months off. Well,
he does.
Well, I used too much this year. I only have so much vacation.
You'll have 9 weeks of vacation.
That is not true.
10.
Nope. 5. All right. So, but with Summer League, probably not going to be any draft picks there. Second round picks and blah blah blah. But there's not going to be that awesome lottery pick. I expect that Marvin Bagley might play a game or two in the California Classic, which hasn't been made official yet, but let's just assume that's back in Sacramento. He might do the same thing De'Aaron Fox did last year, where De'Aaron played, I think, both games, and then was done. Didn't do Summer League. Maybe Harry Giles plays Summer League. Again, I'm just speculating. I could
see them doing that just to try and get him some minutes.
He could, and that would be fun. The other thing is a lot of times when the Kings make signings in free agency, that's where they'll introduce him is down there, so that will be interesting. Mm-hmm. But either way, it's also going to be a tough summer because really, truly, whether this team makes the playoffs or not, and we're just being honest, with that Spurs win over the Bucks yesterday, it dwindles and dwindles and dwindles, the chances. The assumption is that they will not make the playoffs. Obviously, the hope is that they will. Either way, once that last Kings game is played, be it during the regular season or postseason, the wait between that last game and the opening of training camp and then the subsequent opening of the new year is going to be brutal. Brutal for Kings fans. And I know we're way, way, way ahead of the game, but I'm already looking at different speed bumps. Kings are playing those games, the preseason games in India next year. And you saw this with your Warriors last year in China, which is actually a shorter flight. Mm-hmm. Takes you a little bit to acclimate. Yeah. They came out of the box, and you see this with these teams that go overseas like that and come back. Takes them a couple of weeks to get back in. So you're going to have the entire city pulled back like a slingshot ready for opening day. And I'm not saying it will happen, but there's a decent chance maybe they sputter a little bit out of the box before picking it up.
Sure.
But they're definitely next year.
Captain 3-17 strikes.
I don't think 3-17's I don't think 3-17's in play next year, but I also don't think 17-3 is either. But they're definitely next year is the year where for the first time in, 2005 is the last year they made it. But remember that was the Ron Artest guarantee year. I think this is the first. Was it 06? Excuse me. Thank you, Jay. I think this is the first time in well over a decade. We're going to be going into a regular season with an expectation that the Kings make the playoffs.
It's going to be, at least for me, and Jay might feel differently here, but for me and Dave, I want your thoughts too. I feel like it would be a disappointment if the Kings miss the playoffs
next year.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be a disappointment. It would be horrible. I know that sounds weird to say. Not a disappointment. It would be devastating.
Sure. Okay.
Devastating.
Use whatever word you want.
Well, I'm not trying to nitpick, but just to make the point, disappointing would be not making the playoffs this year. Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
I wish next year would be
a letdown.
A big letdown.
Okay.
Falling off a cliff type of letdown. I think Kings fans are absolutely poised to make the playoffs next year. Snarky text of the day so far from the 916. That's because you don't follow golf and we don't get to the playoffs. So March Madness is your favorite. That's real cute. Okay, stupid. Here's the deal. It took until 8/11 for the little brains to come out. Number one, I follow golf and I love golf. Again, I'm talking in terms of the radio show, which is my job, and trying to entertain you guys.
Nobody gets excited about golf.
Nobody gets excited about golf. We'll talk about the Masters. We'll talk about the U.S. Open. We'll even have a couple people on. But that's not broadcasting. That's what we call narrowcasting. You're narrowcasting to a very small part of our audience, and that's fine, and we'll still do it. But nobody cares about Xander Schauffele winning the Poland Weed Eater Open in August.
You could have made that player, that golfer up.
You don't know Xander Schauffele?
Nope.
No, everybody Schauffele. No, okay. That's the deal. And as far as March Madness, again, college basketball, not my favorite sport, not close. But March Madness is a different animal.
My favorite sport is you and I talking during March Madness.
Like we know what we're talking about?
Basketball
it's all about the brackets. Hey, that weekend of basketball, especially those opening 2 days on Thursday and Friday.
It's brilliant.
My favorite time. Those are my favorite 40. It doesn't mean I like it more than the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean I like it more than the NBA. But I'm talking about you have so much packed into 2 days.
I am so firmly in the camp that college basketball mostly stinks. But March Madness is so good that I get locked in for it.
You have to. You got your
I
brackets
love
going.
It. It's so much fun. Even when my bracket's always busted on the first day, and I'm still locked in. Like the energy, the atmosphere,
sure.
Knowing that this is the only time, some of the stars, this is the only time you'll get to see them on a big stage in college. It's I really enjoy March Madness.
Brooklyn, Bobby Marks, our friend Bobby Marks was saying yesterday that Brooklyn got a must-win in Atlanta, and they now have 35 wins. Many have pegged 39 wins as the magic number in the Eastern Conference to get into the playoffs, whereas the Kings will likely miss the playoffs with somewhere you would think between 44 and maybe even 46 wins. They will not make the playoffs. I know it's biased, and the only people that care are the 9, 10, and 11 teams in the West every year that miss the playoffs,
right.
but usually could make the Eastern Conference playoffs. Here's the deal. I was looking at some of these numbers, Kyle. The West has won 14 of the last 20 NBA finals.
Jeez.
And 3 of those were LeBron James, I think, 2 Miami, 1 Cleveland. One of them was Boston, I think, has 1 or 2 in the last 20 years.
I think Boston has 1.
Detroit has, I thought Boston had 2. Detroit has 1. I could be missing 1. Here's another way to look at it. In the last 20 years, and it'll be 21 after this season, in head-to-head regular season competition, the West has beaten the East. The West has beaten the East 19 out of 20 and soon to be 20 out of 21 times. Over those same 20 years, the West has beaten the East in head-to-head competition by over 1,100 games. The Heat. Wait, I thought the Heat without LeBron. Yes. You're absolutely right. So over those last 20 years, this isn't even counting this year where the West is still very dominant, even more dominant. The West's lead over the East in head-to-head competition is 1,100 games. 1,100.
No way.
1,100 more wins than losses over the last 20 years.
No way.
It's at some point, I mean, we're going back to when Jordan retired. It's like, okay, it's not getting better. And maybe it will. It kind of has to someday. But the West, what did we see last year before? I think Giannis was the only top 20 player by some metric that was in the Eastern Conference. The rest were Western Conference players. Now, we saw a switch. Somebody switched from the West to the East that was in the top 20. But it's still brutal. Kawhi, thank you. It's still so brutal. And the problem is that it makes all the sense in the world. Screw the traveling problems. Mm-hmm. It makes all the sense in the world just to get rid of conferences for the playoffs and just go 1 through 16. And we talked about that. We've talked about that quite a bit, where you're looking at some really cool matchups 1 through 16 if you just went league wide. And I think we were saying something like the Kings would be coming in just under the Nets. In fact, let's see, 2, 4, 6. I'll just do this live on the air. 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So as of right now, the Kings would be the 16 seed in the entire deal with the Heat and the Magic being out. So it would be the Bucks and the Kings. You have the Raptors and the Nets, the Warriors and the Pistons going all the way up. The problem is that it'll never, ever, ever happen because you're not going to get the East owners to vote on it. They won't vote. They won't say yes.
No chance.
There's no chance they do that. So you're stuck. You're screwed. There's no way ever. I don't think Adam Silver, there's anything in his power where he can just make some sweeping change.
No.
Well, that sucks.
I'm totally with you because when you shake out the matchups in the league overall standings, the 1 through 16 matchups, they become much more compelling. Maybe not the 1 versus 16 and 2 versus 15s, but when you start getting down into the top 4, 5 seeds, 6 seeds, and who they're playing, it becomes a super compelling playoffs. I think from a fan standpoint, for a neutral observer, if they brought in a neutral arbiter and said, hey, we're going to hash this out and figure out the best way to do the playoffs, I think they come out with the 1 through 16 seeding league-wide.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure because I think the biggest argument against it is travel. How do you figure travel out? But that's with the way players travel these days, it's not nearly as taxing as people think it is. And if you do the 2 days of rest that they get anyways, I don't think it would have that big of an impact on a playoff series.
It took the Kings 4.5 hours to get from Sacramento to Newark.
Yeah.
On this recent trip, 4.5 hours. That's not a ton of time, but 4.5 hours.
If you can't withstand a couple of flights across the country and still play at a high level, you probably should.
It's not even the flights across the country, and I understand travel is travel. But let's just remember, this is 4.5 hours in beautiful plush seats that are lie flat with fresh hot food served. They're playing cards. They're bonding.
They're on a hotel.
They're on a flying 5-star hotel, and then they get off the plane. Their bags are taken for them. They get on these luxury buses. And I'm not making a joke. I mean, these are nice buses. It's not like they're getting on whatever. And then they go right to their 5-star hotels. Now, I understand it's still jet lag. I understand it's still travel. I understand altitude has effects on the body and all that. But it's not like when you and I are rolling cross country.
Correct.
Okay. So, but again, there's no way out of that. We talked earlier, James Dolan, after the Kings beat the Knicks, a fan said, and this was caught on tape and published by TMZ, a fan said, sell the team. James Dolan called him over, asked him what he said. He repeated it and said it's just an opinion that you should sell the team. Dolan said, no, that's not an opinion, which is factually incorrect, and said basically have fun. Not basically, he said have fun watching the Knicks from home. The appearance is that James Dolan, the owner of the Knicks, booted a fan from Madison Square Garden for suggesting he sells the team because that's rude.
Huh.
He's such a trash owner.
He does everything wrong. What's the best thing James Dolan's
done? Financially, bought the Knicks.
Yeah, but
for the fans, I don't know what the renovation of Madison Square Garden.
Isn't there a story out? I don't know how substantiated it is, but Wade and LeBron were going to go to New York, but Dolan, his part of the meeting, he botched it so badly that they decided to go elsewhere.
Sounds right. I think I remember that. It was something Dolan-esque.
Like that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, he is a
terrible
owner.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I don't understand how if you're a Knicks fan, because it is something you talked about earlier, but putting together like a boycott of the Knicks, basically.
Right.
But I just don't understand, even without all that, even without organizing, how I have several friends who root for the Knicks, and it's just this resigned existence of like, yep, classic Knicks. Like I guess I'll root for LeBron. I guess I'll, whatever. I can't imagine that's good for the NBA. Yet the Knicks rake in money.
Yeah. Yep. Don't get it. The guy who was mad earlier said March Madness sucks. Not mad, but he said March Madness sucks and we don't follow golf. Has followed up. Dave, don't sugarcoat anything. Been listening to you for well over a decade. Never have you taught golf. Well, let's stop right there. I guess when we bring David Dusek on, we had Cameron Champ on, when we've had Ryan Winther on, when we've had different correspondents.
Sure.
Was that when I dropped the acid?
Probably.
And just forgot? Okay.
I think so.
When we had somebody live from the Masters last year. We don't talk golf regularly. Like, we're not going to give you golf update this week.
Right.
But we talk. Anyways.
We did a whole segment about the most recognizable golfers.
Yes, we did. He goes on to say, March Madness hasn't been relevant in 15 to 20 years. I think we're talking about a guy who doesn't do brackets.
Yep.
We're talking about a guy. Why don't you
It's
look?
very relevant. And there are people when they talk NBA draft that are literally like, I need to see this guy in the tournament first.
Yeah.
Like, Steph Curry's draft stock skyrocketed.
Hey.
Because of the tournament. Like, it happens all the time.
We only have 2 minutes left. We'll get into this topic again next week or the week after. Let's say the Kings are within 3 games of the Spurs.
Three games.
3 games of the Spurs going into the weekend where they play Houston and San Antonio.
Okay.
I was looking at the schedule. They have New Orleans on a Thursday, Houston on a Saturday, and then San Antonio on a Sunday.
So 3 and 4.
3 and 4, and San Antonio on the second game of a back-to-back. I think Dave Yeager has a very difficult decision to make because of the situation, because they have to win that game in San Antonio. It is the must of all must-wins, and because Houston has regularly handled us this year. It's a terrible matchup for us along with the Clippers. The 2 worst matchups in the NBA, in my opinion, for us. I think Dave Yeager has a very difficult decision as to whether or not he goes into that Houston game and sits all the starters. Literally gives up the game.
I don't think it's that difficult. If there are 3 games, if they're within 3 of the Spurs at that point, going into that Rockets game, is that what you're saying? Going
Within
into the
3
Rockets
games, 3 or less.
Okay, so they lose that Rockets game, so they go to 3.5 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you're then trying. Okay, so let's say they beat San Antonio, so now they're within 3 again.
Mm-hmm.
They have 5 games left.
Okay, what if I change it? What if I change?
Games.
What if I change it to they're within 2? Does that change your mind?
No, because if you losing that Houston game, if you punt that Houston game and you let San Antonio gain ground after San Antonio, you have 5 games.
What if they're within 1 game?
You need to then maybe. I have to look at San Antonio
because they're not winning that Houston game unless somebody's hurt.
But you then play Houston again on Tuesday. If you're sending the message like, "Hey, there's no chance we're going to beat these guys,"
mm-hmm.
like we're resting because I don't think we can win this.
Sure.
Then you're punting 2 games there because that sends a terrible message going into that home game against Houston. You want fans to then come out the next Tuesday night against Houston after going, "Hey, we knew we were going to lose against them, so we rested our guys." That's
I say
terrible.
Take the night off. No. Take the night off, fans. I have many counters for this, but we don't have time. We do have just a couple. Jay, I know we got a break. Do we have time for Peckus, or do we need to do that when we get back? Because I want to get to the Peckus brothers moment of the game. It's your call. Okay, we'll do it when we get back, and then we'll have Bob Melvin joining us at 8:40 right here on Sports 1140 KHTK live from Mesa. Here, Mesa, Arizona, brought to you by Jiffy Lube, and we want to go real quick here. Jiffy Lube's got us covered each and every year out here at Hohokam Stadium. I want to remind you, the phone line is brought to you by Fire Wings, firewings.com. 21 different flavors to choose from. Fire Wings, just wing it. And we're going quick only because the skipper of the Oakland Athletics is joining us, as become a tradition each and every year. Got here a little bit early. It's just, I want to say it's awkward because we always love visiting with Bob Melvin, whether it's on or off the air. But when you have somebody like Bob Melvin who's sitting here during our commercial breaks, you just kind of want to speed it up because you got a few things to do today, Coach, or Skip. And welcome back with us. How are you? I'm
good, really good. We're winding down here. Short spring for us, obviously going to Japan. So feel like you have to jam a lot in there, and so it feels like every day, is a little bit more important. We were not going through the dog days of spring training because we're out here on Thursday.
Is that something you start preparing for before spring training starts, and how you want to kind of attack these few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, the schedule worked out for us. We had a lot of 2 games at home, then 1 on the road, which allowed us to get our main guys at bats 2 games in a row. typically I like to get our guys between 55 and 60 plate appearances. It's going to be more like 40 before we go. So we've played them a little bit more, maybe a little bit deeper into games. But that was something that we knew we were going to do coming into camp.
And you went through this 2012, and we were talking off the air. Actually, had a great year that year, but there's challenges obviously going to Japan, doing real games over there a couple times, spring training back with the Bay Bridge series, then back to a regular season. So with the jet lag, the adjustment, and all that, are there things you can do other than what you just mentioned to prepare? You just kind of have to go through it and hope for the best.
Well, our training staff does a good job. We're gonna have a meeting here in a little bit about, during the flight, when to sleep, obviously hydration. When we get there, we're trying to time it where we can go to bed, a few hours after we get there and try to augment the time change right away. And then, it's really not so much there. It's more when we're coming back that you get it a little bit.
Sure.
But, we get back, we'll have an off day after that. Then we'll have a workout. We have 3 games and then another off day. So by the time the regular season starts again, we feel like we're ready to go. But it just is what it is.
Do you have to do you guys and the players have to handle things differently mentally going into a situation where you're playing real games and then you come back and you play some more exhibition games and then you got to get back into the mindset of regular season again?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, once it's a regular season game and we're lining up against the Mariners there, the importance of those 2 games. So, it's prudent that we do have some spring training games when we come back, so it allows us to get acclimated again, and then you start the regular season again. So, karma-wise, we had a pretty good year in 2012.
Sure.
So, if hopefully I tend to be a little superstitious at times, so hopefully this is the same case.
I'm just knocking
There
on
you
some
go.
wood here. Hey, skipper Bob Melvin joining us. It is impossible to predict what the A's are going to do, and it seems like it's been that way throughout much of your tenure. Last year, I don't ever want to say out of nowhere because I think that's disrespectful, but I don't think a lot of people expected the competitive nature that you guys had and that run you had. What went right last year? I mean, what made that happen?
Well, typically when we have success here, we have younger players perform. We're not going to have the highest payroll, so it's important to us that, that we give younger players the opportunity. And, in our case last year, Lou Trevino, what he did, and obviously the mats on the corners were absolutely fantastic. Chad Pinder's another guy that came up through our system that had a lot of success too. So it kind of revolves around young players for us. 2012, we had coming down the stretch and into the playoffs, we had 5 rookie starting pitchers. So,
Right.
We're not afraid to give them an opportunity. But, I think we knew in spring training last year we had a special group. It might have taken a little while to kind of understand who we were and get the type of confidence. Where is the success and confidence? Do you need the confidence to have success? Do you need the success to have the confidence? Well, it was the latter for us. So we hadn't had the success yet, but we had a lot of confidence. And then once we started having success, you saw in the second half, we just took off and rolled. So, these guys felt good. Every day we came to the ballpark, we felt like we were going to win.
How much does it help you as a manager when you come into spring training having mostly the same lineup that you had last year? How much does that impact the way you go about spring training?
Yeah, I mean, we have the same lineup because we had guys that performed really well, and
Sure.
Ramon Laureano came up, did a great job for us in center field too. I mean, it's one after the other. So that's what you aspire for, and everybody talks about different expectations this year. Well, what we want the expectations. We want to be a targeted team, and you want to consistently be that team. I think that's what everybody strives for. So. When you do have that type of success, then you're going to have some continuity with the guys. We do this year. We've had some minor changes, but for the most part, we look similar to what we did at the end of last year, and that's because we won 97 games. So that's a good thing.
Well, and those hitters, as you said, getting more experience or should only get better. You have the best home run hitter in the game. That bullpen anchored by Trinan is insane. Starting pitching, I'm very curious about that. Obviously, injuries last year with guys like Puck. And now you've got young guys coming up. We hear about Luzardo. That starting pitching, how confident are you there?
Well, you know what? We're last year with the injuries we went through, we actually lost every single starter that we started the season with, and we were able to plug guys in and give them an opportunity, inspire them with that opportunity, and do it a little differently. We probably used the bullpen a little bit more, but Mike Fires came back, and he was important to us last year. Marco Estrada is going to be a big sign for us. And then we have, Brett Anderson, who was here last year. And then we got a whole host of guys that were part of it last year. And I think that's something we do well and creates a lot of momentum, is the fact that it's not just 25 guys. For us, it's close to 50 every year. And everybody feels like they're involved. So, we don't dominate with one or two or three guys. We use a lot of guys, and I think that makes a good feeling amongst the group. So, as far as the starting pitching goes, we have depth there. If somebody gets hurt or somebody doesn't perform, then they have somebody else to pick them up. So we're confident with that group, and obviously, once we get past the sixth inning or so, we turn it over to the bullpen, and we have a lot of success with that.
Do you guys anticipate using an opener again this year?
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It depends on who it is. Depends on the opponent's lineup. There's a lot made of the third time around. Starters tend to get a little bit more vulnerable. Do you keep the first three guys off a starter and allow him to go? Maybe only see him one time around. Right. So. It just depends on who it is and the personnel on the other team. Obviously, we did it last year, and we had some success doing it. So I think regardless we'll be comfortable. But, it's a little different in the postseason than it is the regular season. You do need some starters to give you some innings. We start with 18 games in a row, which is unheard of. And typically early on in the season, you need the days off because some of the starters aren't as stretched out as much, and your bullpen guys haven't pitched as much. So it's a challenging schedule for us this year, but, something we're going to have to take day to day.
Hey, Skipper Bob Melvin with us. Now, philosophically, not just specific to the A's, I did want to ask you and follow up with what Kyle said about openers. You spent time behind the plate in your playing days. You understand that relationship and how pitchers' minds work. Do you think this is a fad? Is this something that is just a stopgap if with injuries, or do you think this is somewhere where baseball might be going long term?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. Each team's starting to try to get a little bit more creative, depending on the personnel. Like the Astros, they don't have to worry about that. They run a top end starter out there every day, and
sure.
That's the way it goes. So. I think you saw a lot of teams last year start to incorporate, whether it was a starter, whether it was, three guys for 3 innings during the course of a game. You saw some of the postseason games and how those are run. So I think the more teams do this and the more success that they have with it, the more creative teams are going to try to go. So I don't think it's going to go the other way. I think each and every year you're going to see teams do things a little bit differently.
Where do you stand on the idea of a pitch clock?
You know what? Of all the things that they've thrown out there, I'm okay with the pitch clock because I want to see, you ask any position player, they want the pitcher to get on the mound, get the ball, and pitch.
Sure.
You take in a long time in between pitches, guys get caught on their heels and so forth. So I think everybody would like to see that. And with the younger players coming to the big leagues now, they've had the pitch clocks in the minor leagues. Right. So there's only a small segment of guys that aren't used to that. And I think if we're looking to capture maybe a younger crowd that maybe doesn't want to sit there and watch a 4-hour game. I understand that. So I would be all for it. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I think doing it in spring training maybe get guys into their routines and get the ball and go a little bit quicker.
If we're getting into future possible rule changes, the other one they're looking at is the minimum amount of batters faced. Is that same thing there? You okay with that? Or
no.
Yeah, that
I'm not
seems
okay
a little
with
goofy,
that.
doesn't it?
I mean, you're changing the game significantly now. So I think there are other potential avenues to go. That's not my favorite. And I think a lot of these potentially are thrown out to pull back
sure.
in negotiations when, after 21 when the contract comes up again.
It changes strategy completely, doesn't it?
It does. The man on second and, in extra inning games, stuff like that too. I mean, now you're kind of taken away from what the game actually has to offer in the tradition of the game. I think there's a balance. But sending a guy out there and having him face a number of hitters, I don't think is in the spirit of the game.
And I just want to build on that because I'm a child of the '80s, and that was I'm a National League guy growing up, and the small ball, and I understand that things have changed, but I feel like baseball, I still see big contracts. I still see lots of people in the stands. I understand that maybe other sports have bigger growth or whatever people say, but how do you balance, in your opinion, like you said, we want to grab some younger people, but at the same time, baseball's been around since the 1800s. That's the way it is. Should baseball change for the younger crowd?
Well, I think in ways it does, and it finds a way of, the game's so good that it finds a way attracting younger people. I think we're embracing more of the bat flips and stuff like that and the celebrations, which is great. If that's what fans want to see, you see it in the NBA, you see it in the NFL. In baseball, that was something that did not happen when I played.
Right.
I mean, you did that and you found a baseball in your ear the next at bat. So a little different as far as that goes. But if that's what fans want to see and there's more excitement to a game that's maybe a little bit longer than the others, then you know what, I'm actually can acclimate to that.
Okay.
All right, I want to ask you this because this is something we've almost come to blows over in the studio. Where are you on the universal DH?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think,
Come on, Skip.
for me, I like the differences in the league. Okay. And what I would actually like to see is when a National League team goes to an American League park, that's where the pitcher should hit. So to show the fan base a different look,
That's interesting.
in a different
Okay.
ballpark. So there's differences in the league. I like it. When we go into interleague, I enjoy. We go to National League parks, doing it the National League way. But I think if you could flip it in the ballparks, you get the fans to see something a little bit different.
That's actually very
I can get
interesting.
down with that.
He's a big DH guy, universal DH.
Right.
Again, National League guy. I love the strategy. I get that nobody goes to see a pitcher hit, but the strategy that it brings in, I mean, you're getting a free at-bat again for free. I understand that. But, again, I don't like changing too much stuff.
Yeah, in the National League, there's a little bit more of a break toward the bottom of the order.
Sure.
And some strategy, but there's also some strategy in the American League where in the National League, a lot of times you're taking your starting pitcher out because you're behind and you have to hit for him. The American League, you have to really identify when that pitcher's done. So there's strategies on both ends of it, but I think to keep both schools, American League and National League, I'd be okay with seeing it remain the way it is, but like I said, maybe a tweak.
Absolutely.
How amazing is Chris Davis? I just marvel every year. This guy's the best home run hitter in the game, and he's not making his $30 million a year. And it seems like everyone likes money, but he doesn't. It seems like he doesn't even care. He loves it here. He doesn't need to be in the spotlight. I don't know. I honest to God don't know how many people that consider themselves sports fans could pick him out of a lineup or could pick his voice out of a lineup, but he just comes up every year and, pun intended, just crushes it. How much of a joy is he to manage?
Boy, he's easy to manage, and he's one of the more well-liked guys in our clubhouse too. And to do it in Oakland, I mean, it's not like we're Baltimore. I mean, it's a tough ballpark, especially at night, to hit home runs in, and he just continues to do it. He does it to the opposite field. You see many players come into our ballpark and get humbled when they hit a ball at night, out to the big part of the park, and they think it's a home run. You see them kind of getting into their home run trot. Next thing they know, it ends up short of the warning track. You get humbled at our place in a hurry. He does not. So there is not a ballpark that when he touches it pretty good, it's not going to go out of, and there aren't many guys like that.
You mentioned that Chris Davis is one of the more well-liked guys in the locker room, but something that we've noticed over the last couple of years is these guys just seem to kind of like each other in general. Does that make your life easier as a manager, and then how much does that locker room cohesion translate on the field?
It does. There's value in that. I mean, you can't – analytically, you can't see that, but literally we talk about playing for the guy next to you. And the playing for him is more important than playing for yourself. Right. And playing for the next guy means you're playing for your team. And it's teams that win. It's not individuals in baseball. I think more than any other sport, it's the team cohesiveness that kind of resonates. And you're seeing, really look at the Warriors. I mean, granted, they got a great talent base, right. But that's a group that gets together from the top all the way down. I think that's important. So. As far as in my tenure here, I don't know that I've had a team that's gotten along this well in the clubhouse. And it's easy when you're winning to get along. It's when you're losing that you have to keep that cohesiveness. And we went through some stretches last year. We weren't playing pretty well, but it didn't seem to affect anybody.
All right, it's time because he's got to get to a meeting here in a second. So
don't.
It's time. This is my tradition every single year.
4
years ago, I told you that I grew up watching you and tried to emulate your stance as a catcher, and a few minutes later, I had a signed baseball from you, which has been on my son's mantle, who was 6 at the time. He's now 10. And we went back and watched old Bob Melvin highlights. And now he has gotten into catching the last couple of years. Now, here's my yearly Little League question for you. Last year was the first year he did not have fun. Some dummy decided to draft him up where he was the youngest guy in his level, and he spent the whole year being overpowered and dominated, and now they just started practicing last week. For a kid who's lost, literally a kid, who's lost a little bit of confidence, give me some suggestions, skipper to father, as to how to keep it as fun for him as possible this
Well, he's got to realize that he was put into a situation where he's probably not going to have a lot of success. But I think at the end of the day, if he can fight through that, he's going to be mentally tougher when he goes along, because baseball is a game of failure. I mean, you as a hitter, if you succeed 3 out of 10, you're failing 7 times. So you have to be able to deal with failure. So if he can get past this year, have some success, he's gonna have that background to know, you know what, I can get through this. And a lot of guys that come up through pro ball have never had failure. And once they experience the failure later in life, they don't know how to deal with it. So as long as you can stay, hey, look, you know, this was a challenging year for you for many different reasons. This year you're going to see the fruits of that. It's going to make you mentally stronger as you go forward.
And every year I get a tape of that, and every year I play it for him when he gets home from school. Skip, you're always fantastic with us. We know you got to get to a meeting, and we've got to get out. We're going to say goodbye from Mesa, Arizona. Jiffy Lube has brought us down here each and every year. They've got you covered. We'll be here Tuesday, tomorrow, and Wednesday, getting all the A's coverage for you, talking to all kinds of players and taking your questions, doing our best to answer them as well. So for Joe the engineer, Kyle Madsen, Jay back in studio, the skipper Bob Melvin, and everybody down here at A's Spring Training, thank you so much. Jim Rome is next. Enjoy the rest of your broadcast day, and go Kings tonight versus the Wizards right here on Sports 1140 KHTK.